Gandhi famously said, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind." And I think this can be applied to the issue of capital punishment. I'm going to talk a little bit about that right now. Talk about the arguments for and against, but in general, I would say that capital punishment is unwarranted, not a great idea. There might be cases where capital punishment is warranted. For example, say someone has really committed a heinous crime, and they keep being in prison, but then escaping prison and committing more crimes. Well, for such a person, yeah, the answer might be to put them to death because obviously it's they just keep getting loose and recommitting crimes. Um, that would be kind of an extreme case, but you know, I think there are cases. I wouldn't say that you just outlaw it across the board, but I think in general, capital punishment is has less going for it than otherwise. Some of the reasons for capital punishment, I'm going to read some of the arguments. Retribution, and it gives closure to victims' families, right? So a punishment proportional to the crime. So if someone kills someone, especially if it's with malicious intent, with malice aforethought, someone rapes and murders or plans out a crime, plans out a murder, then this idea is, yeah, give closure to the victims' families, show the rest of society that we will not allow this as a society, and that brings up the issue of deterrence, that this will deter people from doing the same thing, right? And there's something to be said for that, for sure. If people think, yeah, I don't want to lose my life. I don't want to be. Some people might think, well, if I'm just in jail for the rest of my life, that wouldn't be so bad. Maybe it's worth killing someone, especially someone that I really hate and that I want to get rid of. Maybe I wouldn't mind being in jail for the rest of my life, but I wouldn't want to be killed. So that's an argument, right? Permanent incapacitation, executing convicted murderers ensures they cannot commit further crimes. And we talked about that, right? So yeah, if you have someone who keeps committing crimes even after they're in prison, maybe they escape or whatever, you might want to put them to death because it's not working just having them in prison. But I don't think those arguments are as good as the arguments against capital punishment. I'm going to read you some of the arguments against capital punishment. Um, you risk executing innocent people, right? That's a big one, and numerous individuals. It says this is from I asked Google Gemini. It's fairly unbiased, I think, for the most part. Um, Numerous individuals on death row have later been exonerated, often by new evidence like DNA testing, demonstrating that mistakes do happen and cannot be remedied after execution. So you execute the wrong person. Well, that's a travesty of justice, right? And that's a problem with capital punishment. Violation of human rights. I don't think this is a great argument, but I think there's something to it as well. Is like, who is the state to execute, to take someone's life away, even if they took someone else's life away? You could say, well, it does act as a deterrent, but it also basically tells people that an eye for an eye is good, right? And even though the Bible says an eye for an eye, that's not, that might have been literal at that point. I don't think it was. I think even at that time, the eye for an eye justice was not a thing. But even if it is a thing, it's basically saying, you know um, live by the sword, die by the sword, and that's the way society works, right? If you kill someone, we're going to kill you, and there's no mercy whatsoever. And what I would say is that as long as someone is still alive, they can change. And some people would deny this, but it has happened. I'm going to bring in politics for a moment here. This is all political anyway. Let's look at the thing with Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene right now. You might say that Trump is a leopard who cannot change his spots. He has not changed. Marjorie Taylor Greene, on the other hand, seems to be changing her tune. And some people say, well, this is a political maneuver on her part. It's only partly real. It's not completely real. It's not completely genuine. I think, though, that she is turning a page, and I think she might even, for all we know, she might exit the Republican Party completely. She might, or at least MAGA, judging by what's going on right now. And there have been, I'm going to watch, I haven't watched it yet, but there's a new film out called The Last Republican about Adam Kinzinger and his exodus from the Republican Party after January 6th. But anyway, let's keep this relatively short and sweet. But my point is that people can change, right? And I think prison gives you ample opportunity to think about things and to reflect on how you've been in the past and maybe make a better choice. And I would say even, till the end of your life, you can change. You can find redemption in prison, and there are a number of stories that is of cases like that. Lack of proof of deterrent effect. Research has generally failed to provide conclusive evidence that the death penalty is a more effective deterrent to murder than life imprisonment. So I think life imprisonment is enough of a deterrent. As long as the person is not escaping prison, I think life in prison is a great deterrent. And I think victims' families often end up forgiving the perpetrator anyway, right? And I think that's the right thing to do, is to forgive. And the most people that are life, serving a life sentence in prison, that might be worse than being killed, right? They might rather, be killed than serve a life prison. So, there's a lot to keep in mind here with all of this. Cost and resources. The legal processes involved in capital cases, including lengthy appeals, are often significantly more expensive than those for life imprisonment, putting a substantial financial burden on the state. So life imprisonment is less costly. Capital punishment is more costly and more time-consuming. Moral objections: many people find the concept of state-sanctioned killing to be a premeditated murder, quote-unquote premeditated murder, arguing that responding to violence with violence is morally dubious and brutalizing to society as a whole. And that was Gandhi's idea that we began with, which is an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So I think with all of this in mind, I don't think very highly of capital punishment. And Blue Kazoo on this was commenting on one of my videos, my other videos, and I'm partly doing this right now to follow up on a question he asked me about capital punishment. I don't think capital punishment is analogous either to eternal damnation. It's a different thing. Two different animals. For one thing, you would have to say that capital punishment really is the end completely. right? Eternal damnation is eternal. Capital punishment is not necessarily the end of a soul's journey. Right? Unless you think that death is really truly the end, which is an open question, I think, right? Because there is a very good case to be made for reincarnation, and the idea that the soul journeys on, the soul might go to heavenly realms, might go to hellish realms. I don't think that these realms are eternal. They might feel eternal, they might seem eternal to the one experiencing them, but I don't think, personally, that a just God, um, a loving God, would allow for eternal damnation. Um, but anyway, that's just some thoughts for those of you who are thinking about the subject. You want to think about the subject maybe a little bit more clearly, with a little bit more clarity, and come to your own opinions. I'm not trying to tell you what to think. I'm just bringing it up to think about. And thanks for listening and tuning in. And see you soon. All right. Bye bye.